The city of Fall River, Massachusetts, on August 4, 1892, awoke under a gray and heavy sky, a predictability that seemed to foreshadow tragedy. The stifling morning heat, which would usually lift the dense air, felt more like a harbinger of something dark to come. But no one, not even the most skeptical in town, could have imagined the horror that would unfold in the Borden household. For many, it was just another ordinary day. But for Lizzie Borden, this day would forever change the course of her life and the history of a town that would never forget the most shocking murders in its past. Lizzie, a 32-year-old woman with an impassive demeanor and upper-class posture, had a peculiar, distant, and to some, even unsettling behavior. She lived with her father, Andrew Borden, a stern and severe-looking man who, despite his wealth, maintained frugal habits. Their relationship was strangely cold and distant, as though family ties were merely a formality, an obligation imposed by society. Lizzie, for her part, seemed to have no real affection for her parents, especially her stepmother, Abby Borden, who, though polite and helpful, had never managed to win her stepdaughter's heart. Yet, there was something more in the air, something even Lizzie herself couldn't quite understand. A sense of growing tension filled that house, an invisible pressure that made every family member live in fear that something catastrophic was about to happen. No one spoke of it, but everyone knew something was wrong, something out of place. And on that fateful day, the ominous silence of the Borden house was shattered by a sound that echoed through the streets of Fall River, the sound of two lives being brutally taken. Early in the morning, Andrew Borden left to attend to some business matters. It was a routine day for him, but that day he seemed restless, as if he sensed something terrible was about to happen. Meanwhile, Lizzie remained in her room, where she spent much of her time alone, a space where her restless and disturbed mind could wander freely. She had no idea what the future held, but the walls of the house seemed to whisper dark secrets no one could understand. It was around 9:00 a.m. when tragedy struck. Abby Borden was found brutally murdered, her head crushed with a hatchet. Her body lay on a blood-soaked floor, the wounds deep and devastating, as though the killer was sending a message. But worse was yet to come. Andrew Borden, upon returning home, was also attacked, his life taken with the same savagery. The blows were so violent that the scene seemed like something out of a nightmare, and the investigators, upon arriving at the scene, were left in shock. What frightened them most, however, was the lack of clues. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle, and the only person in the house was Lizzie. Her behavior, however, was what truly unsettled everyone. When the police arrived, Lizzie was there, in a state of apparent calm, as if nothing had happened. She showed no sadness, anger, or any other emotion one would expect from a daughter who had just lost her parents in such a brutal manner. Her indifference puzzled the investigators. How could she be so composed? Something was very wrong. Lizzie claimed that during the murders, she was at home and heard strange noises. But most bizarrely, she said she had no idea what had happened or how her parents had been killed. Her story seemed unreal, full of gaps, contradictory, as if she were hiding something. The town began to speculate about Lizzie. After all, she was the only person in the house at the time of the crime, and her behavior only increased suspicions. Some said Lizzie was merely trying to maintain composure in the face of something unbearable. Others, however, saw in her a cold and calculating woman capable of killing her own parents. There were also those who believed that the relationship between Lizzie and her parents was, at the very least, strained. The case quickly became one of the most talked about in the country. At a time when family scandals garnered immense attention, the mystery surrounding the Borden murders seemed perfect for the public. The small, quiet town of Fall River was overrun by journalists from across the country, all trying to uncover the truth behind the murder that shocked society. But the more the investigation progressed, the more enigmas arose, as if Lizzie were playing a psychological game with everyone around her. The police couldn't find any concrete evidence linking Lizzie to the crime, but something about her seemed incriminating. Her gestures, her posture, her words were an enigma, and this unsettled those trying to uncover the truth even more. As days passed, theories multiplied. Some believed Lizzie had a financial motive, a hidden reason for wanting to kill her parents. After all, with Andrew's death, she could inherit a significant fortune. But there was something more, something no one could define. Lizzie's behavior grew increasingly strange. She made incoherent statements and couldn't keep her story consistent. Her mind seemed not to be fully present. Was she entirely involved in the crime? Or was it all just a facade to cover something even more sinister? What was going on inside Lizzie Borden's mind? Then, the truth began to emerge in a disconcerting way. Throughout the investigation, Lizzie began to reveal hints of something much deeper. On several occasions, she disclosed a relationship of silent hatred with her parents, especially with her stepmother. Abby was not loved by Lizzie. She, like many in Fall River, believed Abby was only interested in the family's money, and their coexistence was fraught with unresolved tensions. This did not justify, of course, the murder, but it pointed to a more complex scenario where old grudges and repressed emotions might have reached a breaking point. In the following days, Lizzie behaved more and more peculiarly. She spent long periods locked in her room, talking to herself and acting strangely. During conversations with neighbors, she seemed disconnected from reality, as if in a trance-like state. People began to wonder, was Lizzie truly the killer, or was she trapped in a psychological nightmare from which she couldn't awaken? Lizzie Borden's trial was a spectacle. Journalists from all over the country were present, eager to capture Lizzie's every move. The courtroom was filled with curiosity, and the tension was palpable. Lizzie, on the defendant's stand, remained calm and unflappable, but everyone could feel the pressure building around her. There was something about that trial that didn't seem right. Was Lizzie innocent? Or had she become a key player in a game of power and manipulation that no one else could comprehend? When the verdict was finally read, it shocked everyone. Lizzie Borden was found not guilty. The jury, though skeptical, found no sufficient evidence to convict her, and the decision left many perplexed. How could someone so seemingly involved in such a brutal crime go unpunished? The town of Fall River, already divided by speculation, was further shaken. Lizzie returned to her life, but the Borden name would never be the same. She would live the rest of her days marked by the weight of a story that would never be fully revealed. But even today, the case of Lizzie Borden continues to spark curiosity and intrigue. Who was Lizzie, really? The cold and calculating woman who killed her parents? Or a victim of circumstances and emotions no one could understand? Perhaps we will never know the truth. The case of Lizzie Borden, with its many layers of mystery, remains one of the greatest enigmas in American history. A mystery buried in the shadows of the past, defying any attempt at definitive explanation. That is the terror of the Lizzie Borden case. A story without answers. An immortal enigma that continues to haunt those who dare to delve into its mysteries. What happened on that fateful August morning? And who was Lizzie Borden really? It's a question that still echoes through the halls of history, and perhaps we will never find the answer.